Good evening. You know, just that good evening gives them a thrill all over the world when they hear it. Or you hear it a year from now and remember you were in the room saying good evening and you get a thrill. That's all part of this work, the informality of it and the freedom. Now we come to some questions that carry us along from our work last night to tonight. How can I experience myself more and more as spirit without getting into the mental plane? See how that follows up that last question? Without getting into the mental plane. Well, you can see from what I've said that hypnotism isn't going to get you out of the mental plane, or suggestive therapy isn't going to. And so, the one thing that will bring the greatest experience, the revelation of one's own identity, is reading or hearing and then pondering. I call this contemplative meditation. When you take a statement of truth, whether it's a scriptural passage or some other principle of the infinite way, and take it into your meditation and ponder it, contemplate it. For instance, in this manner: He performeth that which is appointed for me to do. He perfecteth that which concerneth me. Who is this He? What is this He? He perfecteth, He performeth. Yes, He that is within me is greater than he that is in the world. He again. He within me. Anything that is in the world, any problem, any matter, any discord, any inharmony, any injustice, anything that is in this world, He that is within me is greater. He again. He. Oh, the Father within me, He doeth the works. That's who He is. The Father within me. I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. The Father. The Father. What is that? It's a He, it's the Father. He doeth the works, the Father doeth the works. Paul says, I can do all things through Christ. Christ doeth the works. He is Christ. Christ is He. The Father is Christ. Christ is the Father. He. All of this within me. Father, Father, Father. Not a male parent, but Father. Father. A presence, maybe. A power. It must be a presence. It's referred to as He. It must be a power. It performeth. It doeth. There is a presence within me, which is also a power. And it performeth that which is appointed for me to do. It perfecteth, it bringeth to perfection, to conclusion, that which is given me to do, that which concerneth me. This problem out in the world, I can of my own self do nothing. It, the Father within, the power within, the presence within, it performeth that. You see, as I contemplate a statement of that kind along this way, in this manner, and continue it, all of a sudden a release comes within, a feeling, oh, that's true, there is a He, there is a Father within, I can rest. The responsibility, there it goes, the government is not on my shoulder, the government is on His shoulder. And all of a sudden I find it possible to relax, to rest, to let go, and to let it take over. It performeth. I can do all things through Christ. I live, yet not I, Christ liveth. Christ performs through me. I can of my own self do nothing, the Father doeth this thing. And then I'm let down, I'm released, I'm free. And I feel something take over, and I remember such a thing as a presence goes before me to make the crooked places straight. Now, that is not hypnotism. That is not taking statements and grinding themselves into your brain until they register. That is using your intelligent discretion and discernment to ponder statements of truth, scriptural passages, contemplative meditation, and just continuing it until you arrive at that place of release, and then get up and go about your business. Because now you have left it to the Father within to perform. You can't just go around and affirm, the Father within me doeth the work, so I've got nothing more to do. The Father within must be experienced by you before it comes into action. That is why a reliance on metaphysical truths, statements of truth, or scriptural passages can be fatal. Just walking around and saying God is love is really going to do nothing for you. God is love, but it does not operate for you until you've had an awareness that God is love, an inner feeling. Now, a release from responsibility. Then you'll see something performed and you'll really say, it's true. God is love. God experienced is love. God realized is love. All those statements would be better if that word realized were inserted. God realized is the only power in this world. God realized, Christ realized, is really demonstration. So it is, and we're going to come to that later because there's another question along this line, how we go further to that point of identity. But the first step in it is contemplative meditation, the ability to take passages of Scripture and ponder them until a feeling of completeness comes, then rest, relax, and let it operate. If necessary, take another passage 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later, 10 hours later. Jesus, in a state of transfiguration, speaking to Moses and Elias. This is often regarded as a phenomena of spiritualism. I know that it is not so, but an elevation of consciousness. Please tell us something about it. I am incorporeal. I am spiritual. My body is the temple of the living God. My body is formed of God's Spirit, God's substance. In the beginning, God made all that was made. Out of what? God being infinite, it must have been made out of itself. Therefore, I and my Father are one. I and all God's substance is one and the same, and even my body is made of that same pure substance. I am incorporeal. I have form, but it is not a dense form, and it has no thickness, and it has no weight. It is really a light form. And light is vibration. But somewhere along the line is that period called the fall of man. In other words, his acceptance of good and evil. And along with that came a sense of corporeality. The result is that human sense sees, hears, tastes, touches, and smells corporeally. Human sense is corporeality, physical body, physical presence. So that as long as you are totally in human sense, all that you can see is physical body, material body, whether it's this body or whether it's the body of the building or the body of the animal or the body of a potato. You can only see it as dense form, as corporeality, as physical, finite form. And you never will, in human sense, see it in any other way. Now, you have come to a spiritual awareness, or some measure of it, and you're on your way to a greater measure of it. And as you unfold spiritually, you will find that you are not quite as cognizant of physical form as you were before. In other words, in meeting people, you do not quickly note their bodies or their clothing. Oh, eventually, because there's enough human sense left in all of us, we do. But your first thing is, I believe I'm right in saying this, the first thing is you note the eyes. That's about the first thing. As you are elevated on the spiritual plane, you note a person's eyes, because they themselves are behind those eyes. You'll never find a person in their body. You'll never find a person in their feet or in their legs or in their head. So there's no use of looking there if you're looking for person. In dense materiality, you'd look at the physical form for a thrill. And the more dense the material world you're living in, the greater thrill you'd get out of whatever your idea of physical beauty is. But as you leave that level, which is really the animal level, and you come higher, you're not so much aware of a person's body or clothing, you are more aware of something that shines out from their eyes. And it is in that meeting of the eyes that you meet the person. And that is where you begin your likes or your dislikes, depending on what you see there. Now, the further you go in spiritual development, the less awareness you have of outlined physical form, and you begin to perceive other forms of beauty. You begin to perceive beauty, intelligence, even love and life shining out of a person's eyes or around their lips. You hear something in their voice, and you catch glimpses of something. As you continue your spiritual development, you even rise above that, and you are aware of something that is called an aura. Now, not necessarily a color aura. There are those who see color auras. I'm not one of those. But to me, the aura is better understood as atmosphere. I receive an atmosphere of a person. And I know them pretty well pretty soon. Regardless of whether or not they do much speaking, and regardless of what their physical appearance may be, there's no way to hide it. Everyone has an atmosphere, and you're drawn to it, or you're repelled from it, or you're indifferent to it. And you wonder why. You are feeling the atmosphere of that individual. Now, as a matter of fact, you know this, of course, from personal experience, that when you go into the presence of a person who's cheerful and bright and free of worries and cares, that you can feel a lift just from being around them. On the other hand, you know right well that when you come in contact with someone that is worried, fearful, sick, you feel the depression, you're let down. In much the same way, when you come in contact with people, you can feel whether they're just good humans or whether there is spiritual development. You can just feel that. There's something there that tells you. And they can't tell it to you, because if they do, that's a denial of it. But you can tell it. You can feel it. You're attracted to it. You're drawn to it. If you yourself are on the spiritual path, you can feel spirituality 100 miles away. You don't have to meet the person. All you have to do is receive a letter from him and feel it. Now, keep carrying that further, and you will find that you will reach a height at certain times, only in times of high elevation, when, if you are brought into the presence of a spiritually illumined person, their entire body will disappear and nothing will be left in that place but a light. It will either be a light around their body with the body invisible, or the entire body will be a body of light. It's a momentary thing. It doesn't last too long, but it happens. Nobody can say to you, I am spiritual and my body is light, and then you look and see it so. No. Even when an individual has attained the place where they are a body of light, you cannot see it until you yourself have attained that degree that makes it possible for you to witness what is there. That is the story of the Transfiguration. Jesus at this stage of which we're speaking, was no longer a man. He had been a man. But his spiritual development continued and continued until he became the way, the truth, the life. And that's not corporeal. That is incorporeal and wholly spiritual. He was the bread of life, the wine, the water, the meat. He was the substance of being. He was the truth. But of course, as far as the people out here, he was still walking around in that which the universal human mind interprets as human form. Now, in a moment of illumination, when he was probably trying to awaken the disciples to what was going on, he couldn't come out and say, "Can't you see that I'm not a man, I'm a spirit? Can't you see I'm not a messenger any longer, I'm a message?" He couldn't say that. But evidently something was taking place between them, and he was trying to dig it out of them and make them say it. And so finally he said, "Whom do men say that I am?" Well, so-and-so and so-and-so, a reincarnation of this one or that one. "Whom do ye say that I am?" Think of the difference in those two statements. Who do men say that I am? In other words, he was beginning to tell them that they weren't men. They're disciples. "Whom do ye say that I am?" And then Peter wakes up. "Thou art the Christ, the Son of God." Well, it took a long time to drag that out of him. But now it's out in the open. I suppose some of the disciples fought about that. Probably that is why Judas decided that this fellow is getting too big. We'll have to do away with him. Getting too important. Because Judas couldn't see him as he is. So at this experience of the transfiguration, he has with him the highest of his disciples, the most developed spiritually. And he's probably not talking to them, he's probably meditating. He doesn't go up there for conversation, and they're too far advanced to be taught some more of the letter of truth. So they go up there only for inspiration. They go up there for meditation. They go up there for illumination. And as he meditates, he goes deeper and deeper and deeper within himself until he is so far in the spirit that the fullness of his light body, spiritual body, is made evident. But by that time, he has raised his disciples through his meditation that extra notch that was necessary, so that human sense was dead. They had died daily to their final death. Now they look out and they behold him as he is. Now they are satisfied with that likeness. Now they behold him as he is. Now, every practitioner who has ever worked spiritually, or who has even used mental argument but been lifted up to a place just above mental argument, where mental argument stops and quietness begins, every such practitioner has witnessed something like this, even though they may not have known it. In other words, they may have been declaring truth to themselves about someone or some situation, and all of a sudden they lost track of the person and the condition in their declaration of truth about God and law, spiritual man, the Son of God. And then all of a sudden they came to the end of the mental argument, the mental statements, and for just a flicker, a flash, one tiny bit of a second, something happened, and it was as if they had seen spiritual man, and they said, oh, it's all right, everything's all right. Why? Why is everything all right? Well, it went so quickly that they didn't realize it, but they had lost all sense of corporeality, and in that blinding flash, they saw a man as he is. Didn't really see him with their eyes. They perceived with their inner. Do you have eyes and do not see? Do you have ears and do not hear? I'm talking about your inner spiritual discernment. And with that inner spiritual discernment, there was that tiny flash of the real man. And then a healing takes place. Well, so you can continue with your spiritual development and your spiritual unfoldment, and eventually you get to the place where it is quite a common experience, almost a daily experience, to see someone or other in their spiritual identity, usually a patient or a student. Not everyone all the time, because they're not presenting that picture. But every once in a while, you do catch a glimpse of spiritual man, and sometimes even spiritual form. And it even comes to some people in their sleep, that they become just momentarily aware of that flash of light and recognize that they have seen man as he is. So it is. There are two parts to the Transfiguration. And the Transfiguration is not an experience of 2,000 years ago. It is a continuing experience that began before the world began and will continue unto the end of the world. It is the experience in which individuals so lift themselves above the animal state that they get into their mental state, where they live more in the mind than they do in the body. They live more with thoughts than they do with sensation. They live more with music, art, literature, than they do with corporeality. And even with music, art, and literature, they're less aware of the corporeal form and more aware of what's shining through that form. And so you go step by step into the spiritual awareness until everything about you becomes refined. You're at that stage where you cannot indulge nasty stories, jokes, sights. You're at that stage where the grosser things of life are unpleasant. Alcohol drops away, tobacco drops away, card playing drops away, or gambling. All of these things that humanly were pastimes or harmless things in and of themselves now just become of no consideration or concern. They drop away entirely, and you're living up here. And you keep on living up here until you're way out above the top of your head. And by that time, you have attained some measure of your spiritual body. And then it only remains for somebody spiritually illumined to come along and see it. And they don't see it as a continuing thing or continuous thing, but they see it occasionally. They see it when they themselves are lifted in the light. Thus we have transfiguration, and we have it here, and we have it now. It's available for all to see who have eyes. Moses had been initiated in all the secrets of occultism at the court of the pharaohs. That's the mental plane. When he returned to Egypt after his revelation of I am that, how did he do his works? Stick into the serpent and so forth. usually regarded as phenomena of hypnotism. All of these spiritual tricks, no, I meant to say all of these mental tricks are mental. They're not spiritual, they're mental. Even when they're used by spiritually minded men, they're still mental. And they play a part in the life of every spiritual disciple who goes far enough, only for one reason. In our humanhood, the body controls us, and we are subject to its whims. When it has a little pain, it tells us so, and that makes us feel sick. And it tells us when it has pleasure. It tells us when it's cold. It tells us when it's hot. And we don't seem able to do anything about it but change the outer conditions to make it happy. As we rise into the mental plane, the body does not have that much control over us, and usually we can tell it how to act and how to perform. And we realize now that heat and cold are not properties of the body. Heat and cold are properties of the mind. The body can't tell when it's hot or cold. The body doesn't know whether it's alive or dead. The mind of man does, and therefore the mind can be trained to reach that point of development where, regardless of how cold the body is, the mind doesn't feel it. Regardless of how much heat is placed around the body, the mind doesn't feel it. A person of developed mentality can withdraw consciousness from any part of his body and have no sensation in that part of the body. I have witnessed experiments where a man has withdrawn consciousness from one of his own or his disciples, I've seen it both ways, and sent a hat pin all the way through the flesh. Not one drop of blood was drawn, and not one single trace of pain. I have seen the same man take a 90-pound boy and stand on his chest, and he was 350 pounds. And then invite another person to stand on his stomach, on this 90-pound boy. The boy never knew a thing was happening. He was wide awake. But consciousness had been withdrawn from the body. Now, I saw this man withdraw consciousness from his heart so that doctors present could make every possible test known to medical science, and they had to pronounce the man dead. In a few moments, the man came back and told every single word that was said while he was dead. That is mental control. It is a form, it is taught in India as yoga. Not all yoga is mental control. There is a yoga that is physical control, yoga that is mental control, and a yoga that is spiritual. But mental yoga teaches such a complete control of the body that you can virtually do anything with it that you want. Now, depending on the degree of practice and determination, Moses had been taught in all of these things. Now, when he was at the stage of leading the Hebrew people, he had no use whatsoever of these mental tricks. But how do we know that in the presence of the king, the emperor, Pharaoh, and all his magicians, that he didn't feel himself called upon to prove to them in their own language what he could do. I remember an experience of that kind in New York when Father Divine was arrested because they found that there was a fire department violation in a building that his followers owned. And at this time, they were trying really to get Father Divine. So they arrested him for the violation. He had nothing to do with it and didn't own the property. But he went to court, and the judge, in his judgely manner, fined him $100. So Father Divine made the remark, "Is that all?" And he took the bill out of his pocket, a $100 bill, and flicked it on the desk. And the judge got very mad. "That's payable to the clerk over there. And I don't like your manner. Fining you $500. He reached in his pocket, threw $500 out there, and he said, "Those are only numbers, Your Honor." The judge got mad and fined him $500 more. He reached in and he says, "Your Honor, you can keep this up all day long, you know." He says, "I manufacture these." I'm sure it was a trick, too. I'm sure that he didn't multiply $100 bills. But it was a trick he felt called upon under the circumstances, because he knew, to begin with, that the judge knew that he was innocent, and the judge was just being a party to that which he shouldn't have been, and Father Divine was taking that way of letting him know it. How do we know? I told you last night, Brown Landone could leave his body at will. He could travel any place, any time, be anywhere, whenever he wanted to be. But he didn't do it for tricks. He did it for only one purpose: to show the control that an individual has over his own mind, his own body, his own being. I don't know if you know the story of his passing, but I had been with him just a year before, and he was then making his will. Well, he was 98 years of age, and he hadn't made a will. And I asked him why he was making it, and he said, "Because I'm leaving you next year." There wasn't a sign or any reason for him to. But the next year he called his secretary in one day, and he said, "I'm leaving you." And the secretary said, "Oh, no, you're not going any place that I won't go with you. You won't go here with me." And he sat down on this seat, and he closed his eyes, and he left. And that was the way he went at 99 years of age. He didn't die. He didn't pass on. He left. That was his control. Moses had that control. Enoch had that control. Elijah had that control. And I'm sure that Jesus had that control. When these men are of spiritual illumination, they learn everything that's to be known about the mind and the body. And they don't use it for tricks. They don't use it for show. They don't use it to become known as a magician. But if there is an occasion when they need to use it either for their own sake, secretly or sacredly, privately, for some demonstration of dominion, they can. Or if there is some place where they feel the necessity of using it in public, they will. But ordinarily, those of spiritual illumination do not do those things. You know, Jesus did it in the case of the fig tree. And you can't be spiritually developed without understanding the action of the mind and of the body and why these things take place. And then it's only a matter of whether or not you want to give a little time to practicing them, to perfect yourself in them, merely for the proof that it can be done, and then usually forget about it for the rest of time. And so it is more than likely that Moses was using what he knew for the purpose of convincing the court of his powers, and that he had greater powers than the court magicians, or it may have some other explanation, but that is the one, and that's the way I see it. You remember they claim that he could not get into the promised land because he used one of those magical tricks. See? And but be assured of this: the spiritually illumined know the action of the mind. That's why they know so much about people. Please talk about the mystics, their passing on, and so forth. There are mystics, or perhaps I should say first that mystics are individuals who have attained conscious union with God, and if they really are mystics, can attain it almost at will. Not completely so. It isn't a matter of human willpower, but almost at will. Or let us say this, that if it isn't a matter of will, it happens frequently. Now, there are many people who have mystical experiences, but they are not mystics. In Dr. Buck's book, you will read about dozens of people who had mystical experiences, but not one of them were mystics. They merely accidentally had an experience that was never repeated. The mystics are those who attain it, who know what it is after they attain it, and live in it almost all of their time in some measure, and in the fullness of it at frequent periods. The fullness of the mystical experience is conscious union with God. It is a state of inner communion that has been lifted above communion to the place where the person disappears and exists now as infinite I, and yet maintaining their individuality as the individual. There's no absorption into God at any time, even in the conscious union. Now, in the period even below that of the full and complete union, there is a sufficient union or oneness so that the mystic perceives that I am the life of the grass, I am the life of the tree, I am the life of the ocean. I can look up from under the sea and see the sky, but I can instantly look down from the sky and see the sea. I can look out from a tree and see the birds, and at the same time be the bird that's sitting on the tree. I am the life of all being, and I'm consciously sitting on a star or inside of a star, looking out at this world while at the same time looking up from the ground at the star. I am here and I am there and I am everywhere. I in thee and thou in me and we in the Father. I in the Father, thou in me. I in thee, and in the Father, for we are one. I am that. I am the life of the stone. And at the same time, I'm looking up from the ground at the stone. I permeate all creation and can see in every direction at once, and always as if my selfhood was centered in just one tiny spot, and yet in every single spot at the same moment. I am the life of every person around me. I am the mind and I am the law. I am the power of grace unto them. I am the way and I am the truth and I am the life. You will find in Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman every single one of those ideas stated, if not in those words, so close to those words as to be almost a quotation. But in the Oxford Book of English Mystical Verse, you will find the same passages by 40 or 50 different English mystical writers. Not all of them full and complete mystics, but every one of them had mystical experiences, and some of them were mystics. One of those poems in there is about a girl named Rabba. And she went on one of those missions to Mecca, trips to Mecca, which of course is the great, great experience of the Muslim. Once they have made that trip, of course, they have a different title than all other people to show that they are set aside. They have been to Mecca. Pilgrimages, they're called. And so she had made this pilgrimage to Mecca, and it was a long distance. They had to walk over mountains and valleys, across streams. Hard, difficult journey of many, many days and nights. Cold at night and hot in the day. And they all arrived in Mecca, worn out, weary. All of the throng of those on this pilgrimage pushed forward to get right to Mecca, while this girl hung back. And she began to meditate and ponder. And all of a sudden, she asked God's forgiveness, that she had made all of this trip to Mecca to find the God that had already found her so long before. See that? Realization. People are searching for God. They go to Mecca, and as you well know, they go to other cities too. And they hope to find God. They go around the world seeking the Holy Grail, nothing more than a symbol of God, of completeness, perfection. But it always winds up the same way. When they're weary, when they're tired, when they realize that they've worn out their clothing, their money, and everything else, and they sink back on the ground as weary as that girl was, then comes the realization, there it is, hanging on a tree right behind me. Always, in the end, the discovery is made that the kingdom of God is within me. That's right where it is. The kingdom of God is within me. And realizing that, pondering it, almost understanding it, step by step is taken along both the mental and spiritual path until one day illumination comes. Everything drops away. The light is there, and you realize, I am that. That which I am seeking, I am. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. I and the Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. There comes the complete inner release from personal selfhood, from human sense, and I stands revealed within as my identity. Now, in the book Practicing the Presence, you will find one of my experiences along that line, which I am using constantly in every type of my work. It is the chapter, Love Thy Neighbor. And it is based on this very thing. And so I'm going to take this next question along with the one that I just read. How do you work for the world or a group from the standpoint of absolute truth, from I am or I am that? And here's how. And I will refer you to that chapter, Love Thy Neighbor, in Practicing the Presence. It's both in the Old and the New. It says in there that if I wrong you, since there is only one self or one I, whom am I wronging? Who am I wronging? Myself. Because there's only one self, and I am that self. If I benefit you, who am I benefiting? Myself. Certainly. And then I take you to the 25th chapter of Matthew. When I was in prison, ye comforted me. You visited me. When I was sick, ye comforted me. When I was an hungered, ye fed me. When I was naked, ye clothed me. Master, when saw we thee in prison and visited thee? When saw we thee an hungered and fed thee? When saw we thee sick, and so forth? Inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. When I was in prison, ye did not visit me. When I was an hungered, ye did not feed me. When I was sick, ye did not, so forth and so on. Master, when saw we thee in prison and did not visit thee? When saw we thee an hungered and did not feed thee? Inasmuch as ye have not done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have not done it unto me. Now, Christ, the Son of God, is my true selfhood. But that would be a horrible statement, except for the recognition that Christ, the Son of God, is your true selfhood. Therefore, my selfhood and your selfhood is one selfhood. I am in you, and you are in me, and we are in God. Now, every time I move a dollar bill from my pocketbook to yours, I'm transferring it from one pocket of mine into another of mine. For we are one self, one being, one household. Every time I deprive you, in any way, shape, manner, or form, of one single penny, I am robbing myself. It may take me a week, a month, or a year to find that out, but eventually I will find that every cent that I have obtained by deceit, I have stolen from my own pocket, and it will be missing for a long, long time. Therefore, in this chapter, it is revealed that the way of maintaining human relationships spiritually is to act always from the standpoint that I am you, and then only do unto you as I would be done by you. When the Master taught, and this had been taught, for at least 1,500 years before him, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, he wasn't giving advice. He was stating a law that you really had better do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or else. For in doing unto others you are doing unto yourself. And when you have fed others, you have fed yourself. When you have comforted others, you have comforted yourself. When you have healed others, you have healed yourself. For there is but one self, and I am he. I am that. That's the solution to every human problem. If we in this room could accept that, we would be living the life that the churches hope its people will be living by obeying the 10 Commandments. But we won't have 10 Commandments, we won't even have one. We will just have a mystical revelation that I am he. I am. But I am whether I am Joel or whether I am Bill or Mary. I am still he. I am that I am, even that I am sitting over there. And so I have to learn to conduct myself as if I were the I of you. And then be sure that I do unto you as I would do unto myself, for you are myself. Now I know this, not from reading about it. I know it from having had this experience since 1928, occurring over and over again. One of those experiences in, I think, the letters of 1955. But I don't write of them too often, or speak of them too often, because it lends itself sometimes to people imagining that they're making a demonstration which they are not yet making. The wish becomes father to the thought. And so it is better for each one to attain the realization of their own accord, so as to be sure that they're not acting from suggestion. But there is an exception in this class, because it seems that this class will be a class on mysticism, or the mystical way of life. And so it evidently must come out. And some of you know how many times I've said that I prayed for the day when we would be able to have a class where we could teach healing without mental argument. And you see, this is it. Because if I am you, I don't have to treat you. And I don't have to give you a treatment. I only have to know the truth about I. For the truth about I is the truth about I you, as well as I me. And the deeper your realization of this truth, the less you will have to project your thought out to a patient or a student. Now you will begin to understand why throughout the writings it says that I have never given a treatment to anybody, nor have I ever treated a disease. All treatment takes place within me, and the treatment is about God and spiritual creation and spiritual law. I only know the truth about God, about spiritual being, spiritual law, spiritual cause, spiritual activity, and never, never, never in my life has my thought gone out to a person called a patient or a student, or to a condition from which they were suffering. Never, never, never. When I close my eyes, I'm alone with God, and I'm communing with God, and I'm knowing the truth about God. For the truth that I know about God is the truth about you, for I and the Father are one. And that's a universal relationship. I and the Father are one. That includes you. Now, there is no thought transferred from me to you. There is no you that comes into my thought. And do you know why? Because the only you that I could be thinking about that has a name isn't you at all, it's a concept of you. And no matter what I would do to that concept of you, it would have nothing to do with you. I read that today, the consciousness of